If you want medical advance, you need to do some bet. 3 months after the readout, we are going to run out of cash and we would go bankrupt. And together, we lose together. The tiny little biotech can actually do better in execution of clinical trials than the giant. It's like a Hollywood movie. 3 days, we went from maybe we'll go bankrupt to, one of the stars of the Nasdaq. Within 3 hours, we raised 750 million. And we had essentially more than 3 billion in demand.
Welcome everyone to this new episode. Today I have an exceptional guest. I am with Marc de Garidel. Hello, Marc.
Thank you for welcoming me.
Again. Again, here 2 years after. You came already here 2 years ago. You just started a new position as the CEO of Abivax. And long story in short, this was a biotech in difficulties at this time, and you started to raise 350 million to start a phase 3. You had positive results, and then you just this summer raised 750 million, which makes the story quite exceptional. And yes, I'm very happy to have you here today again to have the details of the story. Why it's a masterpiece, I think, in terms of leadership in biotech.
That I don't know, but
for the moment, yes. For the last 2 years, yes. The future will say. But I would like to start for like a chronological thing, maybe with the beginning when you arrived at Abivax, the first days. Can you share a bit what you've seen?
Sure. So I was actually lucky when I joined to be immediately immersed in the field of gastroenterology, because again, my background was not in the gastroenterology, so I was also learning as I went on. But my first days were actually in the US at one of the largest congress called DDW, where I had the opportunity to meet, with a number of the top KOLs in the world, and where, I could share a bit, thinking around what Abivax was going to go. But it was a very good foundation because I could understand more what essentially physicians wanted with the drug, and how potentially to, lead this phase 3 to success. So, that was also the foundation for establishing the strategy of the company.
Yes.
Because if you look back, again, a couple of years ago, the company had been refinanced with essentially sort of a salvage program in September of 2022, where some US investors and Sofinova partners refinanced the company with 50 million euros. And then they did, again, prior to my coming, another crossover round for 130 million euros. That was basically in February of 2023. So when I came in April, again, I was lucky to have at least, a bit of cash, but not enough to carry on the phase 3. So DDW was very important to try to, to meet the KOLs, but also meet with my team, the new team, to figure out what would be our strategy. Again, at the time, there was when I asked, where is the business plan, where, what are the plans? This company was really built to sell initially.
Yes.
And it was not really planned to continue and to do the phase 3. So, we had to start a bit from scratch about, what, indication we wanted to pursue.
Okay.
How we would go ahead, how we would develop ourselves, especially obviously in the US, because 70% of the market for IBD is in the US. And again, this DDW meeting was the foundation. So then what we did, after we heard a lot of comments about what we could do or what we should do as a team, we gathered together actually in the south of France. And we established basically, the foundation for the strategy, which ultimately we presented a month and a half later to the board. Okay. And that was actually the basis of what we would do a couple of months later for the IPO. Okay. Because when you do an IPO, you need to have a story. And it's not only, a very short-term story, it needs to be also a long-term story of value creation and trying to fulfill, an unmet medical need for patients.
On the market, yes. Okay, then you started with the science and then the finance and then, yes, operations, the teams and
yes,
and finding a right story. Okay. And what do you remember which was the first decision you made? Okay, going to this congress? And then, yes,
well, I think
starting a plan from scratch.
Well, yeah. So I think part of developing a company is you need to have a long-term vision. So because otherwise, as the Americans say, if you don't have a vision, you may end up somewhere else. So what we did is we said first priority is really develop this drug in ulcerative colitis, where phase 3 was beginning. 2, we wanted to develop it in a second indication, which is a bit more serious, which is called Crohn's disease. Then we realized that the doctors at DDW told us you need to develop combination therapy, a bit like in oncology, where you combine different mechanisms of action in order to improve efficacy while trying to maintain safety. And the fourth pillar of the strategy was try to develop a new compound, follow-on drug, because in the south of France, in Montpellier, where we have a small research center, we have a library of about 2,000 molecules that could be also helpful. To keep the adventure going beyond obefazimod, because that was really the foundation for having a strategy. Then the question was how much is this strategy going to cost, and how much money do we need to raise? And we knew we could not get enough money in Europe for carrying the phase 3 and doing these other things that I just described. So we
yes.
Yeah. So we built up, essentially, worked with banks, worked on the bank syndicates to try to access, the Nasdaq. So we were actually, at the end of July of 23, we did what we call test the water meeting with US investors. We got a lot of interest. Actually, at the time, the verbal commitment from US investors was 1.2 billion, potentially, of interest, which was, again, very encouraging. But a couple of months later, actually, shortly after our conversation, in October, when we wanted to go public, then, as you know, there were the events in Gaza and in Israel. So the market started to fall apart. But nevertheless, we were able to raise that third week of October, $240 million. We were actually, that week there were 3 companies trying to go public, and we are the only one that actually did it. But we didn't get as much as we wanted compared to what we had heard in July, but enough to carry on and to execute fully the phase 3 in ulcerative colitis.
You talked a lot
Sorry.
about a lot of things. I just wanted to, it's very, interesting, but I wanted to go back to the decision of the indication to decide not to go to Crohn first. It was decision, related to science, to budget, to...
Yes, it was mostly budget-driven. Yeah, because the phase 3 in ulcerative colitis was going to cost overall $350 million. So that alone, and this was the most advanced one.
Yes,
so it was logical to put priority ulcerative colitis, and then put on as a second priority Crohn's, and start later a phase 2B in Crohn's.
If I understand it well, you were disappointed to raise the first.
No, everything is ready. It was nevertheless, the biggest. To put things in perspective, it was one of the 11 IPOs of 2023. So it was, it was obviously the largest ever in the French market for at least for a French company. So, there were a lot of satisfaction, if you will, to raise this amount. That was pretty spectacular in 23.
And it allowed you to make the phase 3?
Yes. So from that sense, it was very good. But nevertheless, if you were looking a few months back, again in July of 23, we thought we could raise 300 million. So it is good, but not enough to what we had hoped for. So.
Yes, and you talk about the momentum.
Yeah, no, but
it's the momentum you cannot decide, and the momentum of the company. And,
yeah, but I think this was obviously very foundational. The fact that we got to the Nasdaq, then we could build up our US infrastructure, because until then we had essentially 35 employees in France. And we basically built up another 35 people in the US. So we opened an office in Boston, in the suburbs in Waltham. Actually, as I say, often very close to the New England Journal of Medicine. So when we get hopefully positive phase 3, we can bring back directly the printout to the New England. But yeah, we were able to recruit, I think, some very talented people. Also, some people who had been in the field of IBD. So, we are able to attract some people from Arena Pharma, which had been sold just before to Pfizer. So we got, a very good experience, because, one of the challenges in biotech going from phase 2 to phase 3, and certainly was true for Abivax, is a phase 3 is much harder to execute than a phase 2, and for different reasons. Number one, the scale. The phase 3, for example, for us was 36 countries, 600 centers, a 2.5-year program, $350 million program. The phase 2 was, probably about 16 countries and 200 patients, compared to 1,275. So, and the phase 3 is a pivotal study, while phase 2, you can, the FDA and the EMA are less regarding on how you conduct phase 2. So, the level of expectation, the level of demand, the level of quality needs to rise significantly from phase 2 and phase 3. So, and the team we had in France, although it was a good team, was not really experienced to do a phase 3 program.
It was people, developers, it was...
mostly clinical team, and again, some of the research people in the south of France.
Yes, but clinical team for phase 2, and then in the US,
so we built up. The chief medical officer came from the US. We had our head of clinical operation that ultimately was in the US. So we really reinforced the head of statistics. So we really built up truly an execution machine.
Yes, your phase 3 team was built in the US.
Yeah, exactly.
And for you, it was not a choice to try to split or to make. You had to focus on the US market first.
Well, we had to focus on the US again, partly because of the size of the market and the importance of the US market in general. But the skill set, there are not too many employees who have phase 3 IBD, who had phase 3 IBD experience in Europe. Unfortunately, they tended to be US employees.
Yes, it's related to the numbers of studies conducted from the US, or?
Yeah, I think it's also part of the fact that the big leaders in the field of IBD historically have been US-based companies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
You have J&J, you have AbbVie, for example, you have Lilly, you have Pfizer. So you have some of the key players are really in the US. So you need to attract some of these talents into a smaller biotech.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then you raised this money and you had to execute this plan.
Yes, and then things started to get a bit complicated
again.
Because again, the execution of
it seems an easy story from the outside.
Yeah, but
looking at you.
But part of the dilemma when you are in a biotech is you are pressed, to execute fast because you run out of cash. In our case, we knew that with the $250 million we had raised, we would run out of cash actually, essentially by the end of 2025. So we had only roughly 2 years of cash. So the pressure was need to finish this study as fast as possible. That's one side. But then the other one was the importance of the quality of the study. Again, please bear in mind, this study was the second largest ever to be conducted in the field of ulcerative colitis, ever. 2, what we wanted to show is that our drug, obefazimod, was not working potentially well in what we call naive patients, so patients who are put first time on an advanced therapy treatment, but also patients who had been exposed to multiple therapies before and who were failing. Just as a reference, in the US, when you look at the US patients, after 3 years of treatment, only 5% are on the same drug. So the unmet medical need is huge for having a drug that can help patients that have been already on an advanced treatment but who failed very quickly. And this was a value proposition of obefazimod. So what we tried was not only to get these naive patients who are relatively easy to find for execution, but also these advanced patients. And this is where the challenge was. This is why we didn't go as fast as we thought, because those patients are hard to get. But ultimately, they proved to be the winning proposition, and why a few months ago everyone was so impressed by the drug, because we were able to essentially include half of this hard to treat or refractory population into our study.
Oh, okay. And this is, the beginning of the long-term strategy, to have something really well built for the future?
Yeah.
to be able to write a big story, yeah.
Yeah, but I think, the fundamental thing is, you need to develop a good drug for patients. That's, the foundation of everything.
Yes, but you need to get the proof.
Yes, clearly. But the differentiation, when you are in a biotech, actually as a CEO, this is one of the first questions you have to ask yourself, are your drug is going to be differentiated with the rest of the pack? And in ulcerative colitis, there are many drugs that have been approved. But as I was mentioning just before, those drugs are essentially immunoblockers. So what they do, they work very well, very short term, but then over time, either patients develop resistance, so the human body find a way to develop the inflammation across that, around that pathway. That was one. Or the side effects, because they block the immune system, they create, their own set of issues, like, patients develop opportunistic infection, they have pneumonia, they're hospitalized. So to get back to you is, at the end, what you really want, you want to develop a drug that is highly differentiated and that will have this sort of nice combination between efficacy and safety.
And you got that from the beginning, and you knew it could be your winning point.
Well, at least in the phase 2, we had indication that we could get there. But what was very unique in the phase 3, and I'm sure we're going to talk about that, is our phase 3 got even better than the phase 2. Okay. We had greater efficacy, and the safety profile was actually, to some extent, slightly better, which is very unique.
Okay.
And then that goes, about the learning of when you design a study.
Yeah.
When you design a phase 3, you need to learn about, what happened in the phase 2.
Yes, the differentiation of the phase 2.
Exactly. And to try to, improve what didn't go as well in the phase 2, and try to, change some of the criteria so that you have better chance of success for the phase 3. Because again, the phase 3 is a large investment. It's, again, $350 million. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
And it's part of a drug development. The secret sauce is how do you, make sure that when you spend so much amount of money, you work with the experts, to try to optimize, the outcome, but the differentiation of the drug, so that ultimately it is seen as a medical advance and not a me too of, other drugs.
Okay. It's also a bet. So you need also to
when
have
you have
some chance.
when you have a new mechanism of action like ours, indeed, it's a bet for sure. But
you need to bet.
Well, again, if you want medical advance, you need to do some bet. But part of the art is to try to mitigate the risk of that bet. Because when you go into new mechanism of action, for sure, you don't know, you can be 100% sure that, for example, your drug is going to be as safe as others, because this is the first time you try this new pathway. But part of the art and working with the KOLs is to design a study in such a way that you try to mitigate those risks. But there is again no guarantee. This is part of what is wonderful in this industry, is you take risk. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But when it works, in general, it's because you thought through what could go wrong, and you try to design the study in such a way that chance of going wrong are less than maybe.
Yes. Can you explain a bit how you worked? I don't know if you can, but how you worked on this to transform this phase 2 story into a better phase 3 story then?
No, I mean the part of the recipe is to listen well to the KOLs, and for example in our case, I think what was very good in the design of the phase 3 is the fact that those patients tend to receive concomitant corticosteroid treatments. So what we did is from the phase 2 to the phase 3, we decided to reduce the use of corticosteroids from 20 milligrams per day to 15. So that was one. Yeah. Well, to reduce, to allow the drug efficacy to speak more by itself, rather than using drugs that are efficacious, but long-term corticosteroids are not good for you. So these are, the
example of long-term, yes.
of how you can, you learn from your phase 2, and then you adapt it for your phase 3. So that was an example. But another one, there were immunomodulators that were in the phase 2B, which could be used, like the thiopurines, and we removed them from in the phase 3. And what we saw in the phase 3, one of the reasons why people were so excited about our phase 3 is that when the results came out in July, late July, our placebo response was the lowest ever in a phase 3 program. So a tiny little biotech like Abivax was able to execute a study better than anybody in history of ulcerative colitis. So it's an interesting lesson, which goes also again from the learning of the phase 2, but also the focus. I think that was one of my big mantra. What I've learned over the years.
That's what we want.
is focus. I think you do a much better job when you spend 100% of your time on something versus working on 30% on 3 things. I think this is the Abivax example is a fantastic one, because it shows that a tiny little biotech that came out of nowhere, can actually do better in execution of clinical trials than the giant, which has demonstrated it. And that's why all the KOLs, when they saw this data in July, were not only impressed by the drug's ability to function and to do good for patients after 8 weeks of treatment, but also the execution of the trial was 36 countries, 1,300 patients. It was a massive undertaking, even though, coming back to one of your remarks before, it took us more time. It took us 6 months more than what we thought originally. So we were late compared to our original IPO plan. But at the end of the day, what counts is ultimately the quality and the results. So.
Okay. Yes, you have to leverage also the time and to have a bit of time if you need.
Yeah, the only thing is the clock was ticking because 3 months after the readout, we were going to run out of cash and we would go bankrupt. So it was a fairly binary event for us.
Yes, and you knew it was, yes, you didn't have choice, but you knew it was a good decision also to be able to finish this way, and
yes, you didn't have other choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, because again,
you knew the result could be interesting, or
yes,
yeah.
Well, we had
before the readout, yeah.
Well, we had some anecdotal reports, feedback from the physicians in the various countries. They told us, even though it was blinded, they said, we see some patients who are very severe doing much better, and that couldn't be on placebo for sure, right? So I think we had some confidence as to
to continue.
That something was going on.
Plan, but
now, what you don't know is how good.
Yes, and you cannot change the plan in the middle. Then you need to finish
yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. And if the results had not been good, we would have been bankrupt. So
3 months, you said.
Yes, yeah. So it shows that what we do is meaningful, but sometimes it doesn't end too well, and but we are lucky to be on the good side. So.
Yes. And yes, one thing I would like to understand also is why you decided to be such ambitious for the phase 3.
Well, I think it's it goes back again to differentiation, to competition. If you develop a drug that doesn't have much value, why do you spend $300 million to develop a me too? I mean, in my view, it's not very attractive, and I think at least one of the reasons I was attracted to Abivax is I felt, also speaking with the KOLs, this was a very different mechanism of action. This was a very different approach. It was not an immunoblocker. This could make a sort of a leap for treatment. So the excitement of everyday life, also for our employees, is when you work for something which is meaningful. Yeah, that can obviously fail, but if it's successful, it can be wonderful. And this is where at least we are now.
In the middle, yeah.
We have only 8 weeks of treatment. Our study needs to continue to essentially a year. So we cannot say we cannot claim victory yet. But the odds that existed before 6 months ago, where a lot of people were skeptical as to whether this drug would work this way. Obviously, we've passed a big hurdle, and we were in Berlin at the big congress called UEG. So we had 2 late breakers for us, 2 independent sessions. The first presentations, 700 people, so the room was full. It couldn't be. When you saw we presented especially the detail on how drug does on various type of patients. Everyone has been really impressed, and this is only after 8 weeks of treatment. So, the feeling of accomplishing something a bit special was there. So ambition goes. You need. I think you need ambition in life. If you don't. It's more exciting. So, but it's part of also the character you need to have. You need to accept that also the risk level is high and that you can fail. That's part of the adventure.
Yes, but yes, you were the good person to be able to also get this confidence to be able to execute this.
Well, I think the advantage I have had is that since I've been CEO for a number of years, I've developed drugs before phase 3. I've done phase 2s. I've seen success. I've seen failures. You learn also a lot through your failures. So I think I was probably more attentive to certain things that some other people may not look at, and that contributed to this. But it's not an easy adventure, and there are times where you wonder whether you're going to make it or not. But at the end, you need to be persistent and have a meaningful mission. I think fundamentally.
Yes, but here it was making this with a really small biotech, like just starting to. Starting.
Yeah.
And it's also a risk, and you were able to make this because you had also the confidence, the skills, the experience.
Yeah, and you get good people around you. I mean, I think
you knew how to execute this large kind of study.
Yeah, and to find the people who are able to execute, and some of the people also I brought from Syncor, were absolutely key to the success because, I knew them, they trusted me, I trusted them.
Okay.
Because in all this execution mode, what you want is to resolve the issues, as fast as they come.
Oh, yeah.
What you don't want is to have a culture of company where people hide things because they are worried that if they do mistakes.
Yeah.
And I think
every day counts. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so every day counts, and then you can correct because again in these large clinical trials, again, I assure you, there are many in our clinical trials. We face some issues, on a daily basis, and how you resolve them, how you characterize them. Also, you have to differentiate what you think is sort of a systemic problem versus a very punctual problem. But if it's a systemic problem, you got to address it, very seriously and take the time for it, because otherwise, this can, contribute to.
Do you have an example like this?
Well, for example, we had an issue with our IRT system. So basically, the system that basically delivers the investigator the drug to patients. And we had for a little while we started to discover that some of the drug were not going to the right patients, and we thanks God we picked it up very quickly after one day. But we had to retrieve some of the logistics, and do some logistical correction. If we had not picked up that very fast,
you can lose. Yeah,
this could have been potentially you could lose the patients to and the authorities would have said this is not acceptable. So there are examples of things that happen in these large studies that you want to and that's why you need a culture of transparency, a culture of
responsibility also.
Responsibility. As I say often, we win together, we lose together. It's not. It's this feeling we're in a special adventure together, and we're going to do a few things wrong, but let's correct them quickly and let's move on. And let's not be aggravated the whole time about the mistakes we've done. So
yes, that's part of your that's definitely part of the success.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Yes, and maybe the differentiation also.
I think that's one of the difficulties. I think, for example, in large companies, is they become so political. People don't want to take risks because they think that their career is going to be affected. So there is much less, I think, agility and also to some extent modesty so you need to be very, I think when you develop drug, you need to be very modest because this is a very difficult undertaking, and the egos need to be lowered, and I think it works much better.
But yes, we talk about a bit of leadership. But when you arrived, you create this. You took the person like this, and you wanted to have this mood.
Yeah, because I was fundamentally convinced that this drug could be really a good drug. But what was evident from the past is this company was run on a very short term basis.
Yeah.
And when you have too much of short-term horizon, you're not going to make the best decisions. Because again, ultimately, what you want to do is to develop a good drug for patients in the long term. So, but this is the fruit of experience,
Yes, but what I'm thinking is, you need also a good leverage, a good balance between long term and short term. Because if you just have this choice, you need also to focus on this choice, and you don't have the possibility to work on another project.
No, of course, of course. And I had the credibility, for example, for raising money because I had been successful before. So it is clear that
to explain the story, to explain the big story,
to get the trust also of investors that I do what I say what I do. So that contributed to it. But again. The role of a leader is to lift up the ambition But again, and to have the ability to work, to think about the long term, but for sure also on a daily basis to address all the issues that are coming, and it's sort of constant, going up and down from long term to short term. But I think if you are too short term oriented, it's not.
What is long term for you? Like having the drug on the market, or a few years after?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Or the life of the drug?
Well, for us, it's a life cycle. It's also
life of a product.
Yeah, beyond ulcerative colitis, the development of the Crohn's indication, looking at combination therapy. So it's part of a journey.
Okay, can we go back to this day when you had the readout?
Yes,
you discovered what it makes on the patients.
Yes. Yeah, well, it was really a special day. So I was in the US. Obviously, I was, the statistic team had essentially, unblinded the data the day before, and I had told my head of statistics to send me a message when I could come into the office to know the result. But so it was actually a Saturday morning. And I said, please text me when I need to come in. And so he texted me, and on the text there was actually nothing except sunshine. So I thought that's probably a good sign. That means at least we made a statistical significant outcome. But what I didn't know is how shiny would be the sun. And so when I came in, he showed me with the team these results. And what was amazing is our placebo-corrected effect was 16% in those two studies compared to 12% in the phase 2b. So in other words, we had a more efficacious drug, in phase 3 than in phase 2. And in the history of drug development, that happens very, very rarely. So I don't know. I don't have the statistics, but it's extremely rare. So the level of surprise was, beyond expectation, because I thought, the best case was 12% to be pretty much at the same level of the phase 2b, because that was part of the changes we made in the design of the phase 3. But we had basically overpassed any expectation. So it was fantastic. And then on the safety side, it didn't seem to have, really material adverse events that would, pretty much the same as the we saw, some headaches, early on the first week, but the last, couple of days, you take Tylenol and you're all good. And the rest there was no incidence of really any major manifestation of side effects on anything. So, I mean, there are obviously some one-off patients that developed certain conditions, but there were no signals of anything. So it was just an absolutely incredible time. And then, as a result, so I called my CFO, I called my head of IR. I said, initially we had planned to take a week to review the data, to prepare the thing and do basically the financial communication the following weekend. And what we did is we accelerated everything. I said we need to have a board meeting, on Sunday night. So so within a day we had to put all the slides together. So people were literally days and night, and we did the communication on essentially on Monday night, and on Tuesday the stock was traded. We actually blocked, respectively, for 45 minutes, the Euronext, our quotation on Euronext, because there was too much demand. And then when the Nasdaq opened, the same thing happened for nearly, I think it was a bit less, 30 minutes. There was too much demand on the stock, and the stock went up that day by 600%. And 600%, no stock on the Nasdaq has ever done that. So it was for us, it was like, it's like a Hollywood movie, is it true? Is it, what happens is just beyond expectation. So within, I would say, 3 days, we went from maybe we'll go bankrupt if the study doesn't work to, one of the stars of the Nasdaq, at least for the year. So that was the situation. And then on Tuesday night, because since we were listed on the French market, we could not raise the what we wanted to do our follow-on the same day, the first day of quotation. So we had to wait basically 24 hours per the regulation in the Euronext. But that night, so we had, with our syndicate of banks, we started the process to raise money. So we said, we want to raise. Initially, we thought 200, and we said, well, probably 400 given the stock price reaction. And then what was another sort of extraordinary set of events, within 3 hours, we raised 750 million, and we had, essentially more than 3 billion in demand. So we had to, my team actually spend more time that night to allocate the amount of money that the funds, wanted to. Obviously, we were not able to meet. Well, we had basically, from 3 point, I think it was actually 3.5 ultimately to 750. So we had to divide pretty much everything by 4 or by 5, to allocate to. So they spend, my CFO, my head of AR with the banks, worked probably until 2 o'clock in the morning to allocate, what could be given, out of the 750 million to all these big funds. Some funds, just to give you an idea, wanted to invest 300 million. So this was just a massive, a massive event for us, and like a kind of a dream. And but the good thing is we got the money, and now we can carry on and execute again the maintenance. Finish this essentially 1-year study. I would say restart the Crohn's program, because Crohn's, we put it a bit on the side, because again, we put all our money on AppTech. We're focused on AppTech because we knew if AppTech doesn't this phase 3 in UC didn't work, would be dead, right? So now Crohn's, now we are doing also preclinical experiments with combination therapy with other drugs. So we'll report them early next year. And also we are trying to figure out, how to develop a next generation compound. So, yeah.
But yes, crazy week.
It was a crazy week. Yes.
No sleep.
No sleep for a while. Actually, even the following 2 weeks, we had a lot of demand, and it's still today. It's just incredible the level of interest we have. But not only from investors. The day before yesterday, I was with University of California, and they already want to prepare the launch for 4 million patients. Their doctors, so when they saw the data we presented in Berlin, are so interested. They say this drug could become the standard of care in ulcerative colitis. So they, a year and a half before launch,
don't want
they
to wait.
They really want to work with us to prepare. Everything. So it's obviously pretty spectacular.
You need to get used to the normal thing to pass to this. Okay. And I think, yes, talking about this week, I think there is kind of also a good communication drive, or why did you decide to present it so rapidly during the night? Is it a matter also of I don't know?
No, it's a materiality. I think
why?
The risk was that given the quality of the data, you have obviously to make sure, because we are a publicly traded company, we didn't want to have any leaks.
Okay, someone to
someone
invest in
that
this.
would get a bit overly excited. We would speak to someone to say, oh, by the way, they get great data, and then so it was really driven by compliance. Compliance.
Yeah.
So you need to. So
compliance. You cannot wait to.
No, because you have 2 days max. By the time you get very material information, you have 2 days to communicate it to the market when you're a public company. So we were kind of, but the decision, obviously, to convoke the board, was to address that point, because I was afraid that my team would be so excited that they would start to speak. Yeah.
And you knew what did you expect with instead of what happened?
What did I expect in terms of
yes, of I don't know, of a reaction, of amount or reactions?
Well, yeah, I think it surpassed our expectations, because for example, in terms of fundraising,
you let the market decide.
Yes, sure, but we thought we could raise again. The week before, we thought we would raise 200 million. When we saw the data we looked, we thought we will raise 400 million. And then when actually we went, it was nearly double that, and we could have raised more. So, but then there is also a question of dilution as well, and the board had set basically sort of a max to raise. So, but 750 million was obviously fantastic. In the history of Nasdaq, on biotech, it's in the top 10.
Biotech, yes. Yes.
It's in the history. And obviously in France, it's the largest. So this was just already a pretty spectacular fundraise.
Yes, and the limitation is yes, it's related to, you said, okay, the board didn't want more. It's a matter of dilution, but it's also a matter, Can you explain?
Well, it's a good question of that we thought we needed to have until the US launch. The banks told us you want to get finance until the US launch because this is the next big, obviously,
plan. Okay.
Material event for the company. So we said 750 is what we
need. Okay.
And that was at the end of the day the conclusion. So.
Okay, and then it means you talk about the US, launch in the US, and launch in Europe would be after, or?
So because the study was
done, you made so many countries,
because the study was done in so many countries, we can file in various different markets. So obviously US would be number one, then EMA would be the next one, and then we plan in 2027 to go to China, to go to Japan, to go to Korea. I mean to most of the countries, Canada and Switzerland, all the rest of the world, gradually speaking. But our view is from a corporate development standpoint is that it would be very hard for us to execute a launch, everywhere. We think in the US we need about 300 people to launch the drug. So that's our current estimate. I mean, if we have to build up, in every country, it would be a massive undertaking. So the execution risk, notwithstanding also the money it will require to build up infrastructure in every country, our strategy is to try to find a partner outside of the US. So one company ideally, if not, would have to split, to do the product launch. So, but the US launch is planned currently around the Q3 2027, and in other countries probably in the following month.
Okay, then Abivax is a US company.
No, it's a French company, but it is publicly listed both in Euronext Paris and in the Nasdaq. And our operations, will move gradually. We'll keep obviously the French operation, but the US is going to take a predominant, weight as time goes.
Yes.
Because we need to build up, for example, the launch infrastructure. So in the US, to launch, we are again 70 people. By the end of the year, I think it would be at least 100. But we need probably to hire 200 people by the end of 2027. And that will be mostly in the US because of the US
launch. The headquarters are in Boston now?
Yes, in Waltham. So it's on the west side of Boston. So we are a lot of biotechs. Actually, we are in a building where it's only a biotech building. So you have plenty of other startups around. So
yes. And the question is how you then it's a normal decision, obvious decision to start with the US, to have 2 years in advance the drug in the US, and then for clinical trials abroad. And
well, the US market is 70% of the one of the difficulty, as you know, in our industry is the US pricing is a multiple of Europe or other geographies. So what happens, at least in IBD, in inflammatory bowel market, the ratio, which tends to be 1-3 in general for all drugs, in IBD is more 1-6. So the price in the US is 6 times higher than in Europe. So again, as a biotech, you have to go where it's already complicated to develop yourself, and you need to reward investor for the work you do. So you go to the US first.
Okay, and in terms of how you were seen in the landscape of of these drugs. You were seen as a biotech, and now you're seen as a serious biotech, and from big pharmas who are already existing in this.
Well,
You've seen the.
I think certainly there's been a mutation of how the company has been perceived. I mean, for us, in Berlin, it was what was astonishing is, again, we did the two plenaries, two separate plenaries, the number one presentation on both. So we had 700 people. When our presentations from KOLs were finished, half of the room got emptied because it showed that actually people only showed up for our presentation, given the level of interest. And yet we had a booth, which was, I would say a third of this this studio. Yeah, because when we were running out of cash, so when we came to Berlin. We didn't know, so we had a very little booth.
Okay.
So it was
fair enough.
But it was an amazing contrast. So on the podiums, we were seen as the story of Berlin. I think that's a fact. And yet we are this tiny little, company with a pretty ridiculous booth. But again, my team was wonderful. We had, I think,
you've made the job.
and a lot of people came to see us.
Yes, and. Yes, I'm curious also about the conversation these big pharma can have with you, because they must be curious about how you.
Yeah, obviously they're
manage
watching.
this.
They're watching us for sure. They are certainly intrigued. I think initially the mechanism of action caused some concern on their side. Now we got this pretty brilliant data. We did, by the way, market research in the US, in the month that followed, so basically in August. And, so we had about 70 physicians from academic centers or for community gastroenterologists. And they all said this drug will actually probably garner a third of the market in the advanced population, the refractory population, and about 15% in the first line, which would make it the leading drug in the future of IBD. So I think they all confirmed our intuition, which the result in July, that the results are really, such that this could become, the number one drug in IBD. Now, we need to wait for the maintenance data. We need because we still have a few months to go. But at least based upon this 8-week, the profile of the drug is seen. So I think for big pharma, they are going to obviously watch us, and I have no clue what they will do ultimately. But if I were them, at least some of them, I would be very worried. Yeah. Yeah, so.
Thank you. But it's I come back to the we slowly finish. I come back to the beginning when you decided to take this project.
Mm-hmm.
You knew you had in hands a lot of differentiation like this. To be able to say, okay, I could drive something which is something really different, or what did you have in mind? You cannot imagine this, like to have one of the biggest drugs.
Yeah, go back to the idea. The phase 2 was intriguing.
Okay.
And
the way they build it and the results.
Yeah, but the results were a bit affected, I think, because of an execution issue, and also it was during COVID, where there were some questions not only on the mechanism of action, but on the dose response. So some physicians and some big pharma were concerned that when you don't have a clear dose response in a trial, that may mean that your drug has something something is strange.
Okay.
But what I was able to find out is this question of dose was mostly an issue related to the execution, because we had done, part of the sites that were involved in that phase 2 were in Ukraine, and in particular there was one site who, again, you cannot look back with precision because we didn't do a significant audit and things like this. But it turns out that one site really skewed the data in such a way that this dose response was sort of inversed. But again, that was one of the noise in the phase 2 that you had to put a bit on the side to say what is truly the drug versus the execution of the trial. And again,
on the side,
and then the bet I had made, but again, thanks to the discussion we have had with, for example, Sofinova, partners who's been very critical in that period of time. Also talking with KOLs, I became convinced that this could be noise, even though at the time they was not 100% sure. But then we, thanks to my team, thanks to further work, we got clear that it was more noise and that actually there would be some dose response in the phase 3 trial, which we kind of saw. Yeah, so it's but again, at the end of the day, it's a bet, right? You have to say, what are the plus of this drug? What are the minuses? What are the risks that exist with the profile after you see the phase 2? How do you mitigate those risks in the phase 3? And then you say, yeah, I go or I don't go. If we had not done the mitigation in the phase 3, again, this phase 3 could have blown up. So even though with a good drug, so it reminds ourselves that execution is an integral part of the success of a company. And that's why, when you come back to leadership of biotech, I'm convinced that after the end of phase 1, it's very important to bring leaders who have experience in drug development in phase 2, in phase 3s, because again, the technicality of, developing a drug until phase 1 are very different from phase 2 and phase 3s. And, I think that's one of the challenge when you have had, for example, a founder who has done, a terrific job discovering a drug and bringing it to early human clinical trials. Very often, those people, are not the right ones to continue the story, simply because that's not their skill set. And, that's, I think, one of the big consideration in drug development, especially when you run these very large chronic, clinical trials.
Yes, to be able to see the risk, the balance of risk.
Exactly, and then to figure them out, and then to have a good team.
Long-term opportunities,
yeah.
Also.
And to have a good team that can develop it, Because again, at the end of the day, it's my team, I am the chief of the orchestra.
Yes.
I know when the music doesn't sound right, but the people who play the music is a team, and it's a team that makes the company successful.
They know.
And they make the company successful. So,
yes, and you know.
It's a team. Not me.
Yes. Thank you, Marc. I think I've had so many incredible stories in 1 hour. Do you have other things we missed? Other stories?
No. Watch what's next. So we'll see what happens.
Yes, need to wait. You have 2 years, you say now?
Yeah, so 2 years.
Then,
okay.
See you in 2 years, Marc.
Okay.
For the conclusion of the story.
Thanks.
Thank you, Marc.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to this episode. It was great to share this story about connection, inspiration, and creating a positive legacy. Don't forget to subscribe to stay updated on future episodes, and talk to you soon. À bientôt.